75% of girls and 80% of boys would be affected by the price of cigarettes. And I think that is, if anything, a bit more than what you see in other parts of the world.
This episode is brought to you by Podcast Assist, offering voiceovers, audio editing and mastering, transcriptions and show notes, episode summaries, and even hosting a podcast on a topic important to you. Visit facebook.com/Podcast Assist for more info on their flat $30 per hour rate. Subscribe with iTunes, Audio Boom, Stitcher, or your favorite podcasting app. And if you enjoy what you hear, like us on Facebook. Also, consider throwing a little cash our way by visiting patreon.com/KoreaFM. And find more of our great content on our home on the web, KoreaFM.net. Newly released data on smoking habits in South Korea says despite last year's increase in the price of cigarettes, more than 20% of young smokers will continue smoking. Out of nearly 7,100 teenage smokers surveyed by Yonsei University in 2013, 20% of men and 25% of women said they were undeterred by the increase in South Korea's average price of cigarettes by 2,000 won per pack. And to find out what these results mean, I spoke with an economics and health policy professor who's done years of research on the relationship between the price of cigarettes and smoking habits.
I'm Frank Chalupka. I'm an economist, a distinguished professor of economics at the University of Illinois in Chicago, and I direct the university's Health Policy Center, and I also direct a research program called Tobacconomics, where we do research on the economics of tobacco and tobacco control, including a lot of work on the economics of tobacco taxation. What stood out for me was actually the opposite, that the 75% of girls and 80% of boys would be affected by the price of cigarettes. And I think that is, if anything, a bit more than what you see in other parts of the world. So we know from the work that we've done, we know from the work that others have done, that young people are particularly sensitive to price increases, 2 to 3 times more than adults are. But, for me to see that, the vast majority of kids are actually quite responsive to prices in Korea was if anything, surprising. So I was kind of interested in the way that they spun the results to highlight the fact that there were some kids that weren't, but to really ignore the fact that 3 or 4 times as many were actually quite responsive to the price. We have done work like this in the U.S. where we've asked kids about what would happen to their smoking behavior if you raise prices by 50 cents a pack or $1 a pack. And what you see is that some kids respond to small price increases as the price increases get bigger and bigger. You see more and more kids say that would deter them from smoking. But again, to see 80% of kids, 80% of boys or 75% of girls say that those high prices would keep them from smoking is actually quite a high number.
Despite major cigarette price increases last year here in South Korea, the Korea Times reports that researchers in charge of the study say that, quote, the impact of cigarette prices on smoking is insignificant, considering the financial resources of teens. And I asked Professor Chalupka to describe the most effective way to design price increases for cigarettes.
One of the things that we've really been emphasizing is the role of affordability. So it's not just price in absolute terms, but it's also really thinking about price as it relates to income. So to the extent that incomes are high, to the extent that kids have a lot of disposable income, cigarettes are relatively affordable. And if you look at what was true in Korea before the tax increase last year, cigarettes were actually among the most affordable in the region, given relatively high incomes, given relatively low prices. So the tax increase that happened there did help make cigarettes less affordable, which is going to have an impact on consumption. But at the end of the day, they're still relatively affordable. If you looked at the price there relative to the price in every state in the U.S., prices would be cheaper in Korea than they are here. So there's still a lot of room for increases in prices. And then the second factor is this idea of how big the price increase is. And part of what we've been trying to tease out is looking at these sort of big price increases versus more incremental changes in price that eventually add up to the same amount. And what we see is that these sorts of big price increases are actually relatively effective. I think that they are much more dramatic. People see them. They're much more obvious when they go to the store to buy cigarettes. And that carries some additional shock value. It's harder for the industry to offset with its pricing strategies. And what you end up seeing is that those tend to have a bigger impact. So again, I look at the data that came out from this study, and to me, it tells me that this has been a very effective policy. The big tax increase, the near doubling of prices, has been an effective deterrent to keep 75 to 80% of kids from taking up smoking who might have otherwise done it. But again, the fact that there are still some kids that say the price isn't affecting their decisions tells me that there's room for further price increases.
I also spoke with another expert to discuss youth smoking trends seen here in South Korea over the past decade and how the methods used by the Yonsei survey and other smoking data collection methods should influence how you interpret the results.
My name is Qing Li, and I'm the senior analyst in American Cancer Society Economic and Health Policy Department. I've actually done the 2005 and 2008 waves of the Global Youth Tobacco Surveys, and which is developed by WHO, and really nice data. That's it's a survey based and in school, and we do find a lot of interesting stuff in the South Korean waves. So first of all, it's really high prevalence of smoking. You can see 20-30% of people, they are smokers. And also you found the age of them initiating is actually quite young. You found in South Korean waves, most people, they were saying, I initiated on my age 12, 13. So it is a problem in South Korea of the smoking among teenagers. I did read that paper, and their specific question is actually, there are a few choices asking you what particular price range will make you stop smoking. So in that paper, there was an option saying that no matter how the price changes, I will not stop. So that's a very classic question to ask in tobacco use surveys among youth. So in global youth tobacco surveys, in the South Korean waves, they also asked similar questions. They were asking you what price range will stop smoking, but in that survey, there are only choices like 2,000 to 3,000 won, 3,000 to 4,000, 4,000 to 5,000 and above. So when they're choosing, the last option is probably sometimes not because they really, if you ask them what price will stop you from smoking, they're not going to fill in infinite if they have a choice to. It's just that among those options, they put their attitude towards the very end. So they define them as the persistent smokers. It's just like an attitude. But as the authors in that paper admit themselves as one of their limitations, young people are not going to do what they are saying. So it's just an attitude. They just express an attitude.
I'm Chance Dorland for KoreaFM.net. This episode is brought to you by Podcast Assist, offering voiceovers, audio editing and mastering, transcriptions and show notes, episode summaries, and even hosting a podcast on a topic important to you. Visit Facebook.com/Podcast Assist for more info on their flat $30 per hour rate. Talk radio, music, and podcasts from the Korean Peninsula. KoreaFM.net.